Good morning. We were just laughing in the back. Sue has a script, and then she just throws that script right out the window, doesn't she? Thank you all very much for being here. How many of you, this is your first underground? Ooh, you're in for a treat. And how many of you have been here before? All right. So today, the topic is around cults. And Sue called it, my favorite cult is being a Metallica fan. Do I have any fellow Metallica fans in the room? Okay, how about Swifties? Are there any Swifties? That's quite the cult as well. All right, how many CrossFitters do we have in the room? We do got a couple CrossFitters. Peloton, I hear that's become the next one. How about vegans? Vegans, there's a few vegans. Anybody drink IPA? That's quite the hipster cult these days. There are cults and cult-like behavior that's happening everywhere. And don't worry, nope, don't panic. We're not talking about the murder UFO type cults, right? But we are talking about what can we learn from the tipping points and the change makers and the misfits and what's happening, what creates that groundswell, and how can we then replicate that in credit unions. And so I think that today's discussions are going to be all around these behaviors that we see, and they're part of everyday life, things that we know that we each do ourselves. But being a cult is really about a shared sense of belonging and like a culture that's built within that, right? And those ideas could create blind spots, or it could create an evolution that changes the world. Yeah, and so we're going to examine all those pieces. With that, though, I thought I'd start us off. How many of you have heard of the Mandela effect? Most of us, right? And if you haven't, it was a term that came from an author could have sworn that Nelson Mandela passed away while he was in prison. Well, in reality, he actually got out of prison, became president, passed away many years later. And so it's this idea that it's this collective misremembering where we could have swore that something was said a certain way or it was presented a certain way, and then actually that wasn't the truth. Some few famous examples, maybe if you've heard these, is the line that Darth Vader says in Star Wars. What's his famous line? Anybody? Yeah, Luke, I am your father, right? When in fact, he doesn't say, Luke, I am your father. He says, no, I am your father. And everybody goes, wait a minute, I'm pretty sure there's t-shirts that say, Luke, I am your father, right? Another example is Snow White. When she's looking at herself in the reflection, what does she say? Mirror, mirror on the wall. Well, as a matter of fact, she doesn't. She says, magic mirror on the wall. I know it's these weird things like that. Maybe you've heard we use 10% of our brain. Right? But in reality, we use, some of us use the whole thing. And another one that was really interesting to me is the Napoleon complex, like a little man syndrome. You may have heard of this, right? Where Napoleon, in fact, was 5'6", which was above average for Frenchmen in the 19th century. Yeah, so it's these things that we collectively have created a new reality. Well, I recently had one with my teenage son who is too smart for his own good. And we were playing that game Heads Up. Has anybody ever seen playing that game? Where essentially you put a word on your forehead, and then everybody else gives you clues on how to guess what that word was. So let me see if you can guess it. So he had a word, the category was countries, and he had a word on his forehead. And my descriptor to him was, it's a country in the Middle East, Taliban, war, conflict, we've deployed troops there. What might you think that country is? Iraq. Thank you. Afghanistan, right? It was Afghanistan, and we went through. He lost, right? The timer ran out. He could not get it. He's so frustrated, and then he looks at it and he's like, "Afghanistan? That's not a country in the Middle East." And I went, "Yeah, it is, right? I mean, it is. No, as a matter of fact, it's not. Yeah." Yeah, there we go. I know, thank you. And yeah, you can Google, you can fact check that one because I did over and over trying to prove him right. But yeah, something like that where I could have swore that it was like that. Final one for you are these little Arctic rodents called lemmings. And there was a documentary on this in the 1950s, a Disney documentary on lemmings and the life of these little rodents that ran around and were a family and things. Well, in the end of this, they had this dramatic storytelling where these lemmings jumped off a cliff. It was like this mass suicide, and they all followed each other off the cliff. When in reality, lemmings don't do that. They don't have that same social community, and they aren't suicidal. But Disney created that story. But that didn't stop every parent in the 80s from saying, if your friend jumps off a cliff, would you? right? You think about that, and it's so we end up creating this group think. So when it comes to cult and it comes to culture and things, that we want to be able to look beyond and not get succumbed or not be kind of blinded, whether it's an echo chamber or a group think or a community think, but be able to evolve. So in the spirit of the underground and radical truths, I thought I would go a little David Letterman style and give you the top 10 behaviors that stunt growth. So the top 10 behaviors that stunt growth. And it's already up there on the thing. So top 10 behaviors. Now, I was sharing this with a colleague. I just want you to know, because I consider myself young, even though I've been in the industry, as you guys know, from the late 1900s. And I gave... Yeah, I gave this reference. I'm like, I'm going to go David Letterman style. And they went, who? Please tell me you guys know who David Letterman is, right? Okay, I'm amongst my people. Here are the top 10 behaviors that stunt growth. Number 10 is treating the underground like a regular old conference, right? If you came here to sit politely or stand in the back only and leave unchanged, then you missed the point. The underground is not about content, it's about confrontation. You came here to put ideas into action. For those that this is your first, it's going to feel like a lot, and it's going to happen so fast, you're going to be like, oh, what just happened? Well, excellent. That's exactly what we want. These are the people in the room that are making change in this industry, and we urge all of you to get out there and do that. So if you see anyone in the room at any point, just lay them back in their entitlement and being spoon-fed, elbow them, and say, let's do it. This is our opportunity. Number 9, think size equals strength. Just because a person is big does not mean they're strong. And for some reason, we've put it in our heads that bigger means better in our institutions. There are credit unions with $20 million in assets that are changing the lives of their communities. And then there are credit unions with $20 billion in assets that are doing nothing even remotely interesting. Right? And I think that size does not create relevance, courage does. Number 8. Disregarding diversity. This is an important one. I brought a few little stats on this, but diversity is certainly taboo right now. It's almost afraid even to have some of these conversations. But some of us in this room have been fighting for inclusion since way before it was cool, right? And every generation has been defined by this progress or this discomfort that comes. Think about in the 1960s and sitting on counters and refusing to work or dodging the draft. Or in the 70s, upheaval and burning bras. Burning bras, where's Sue? There she is, burning bras. In the 80s, it was about awareness and AIDS and the sexual harassment laws. In the 90s, compliance, gays were on TV, and Rodney King riots. In the 2000s was when we started saying diversity is good business. In the 2010s, we created strategies around it, and there was Black Lives Matter and Me Too. And then in the 2020s, it accelerated awareness, but also polarization, right? And it went from being a movement to almost a moral mandate. And so because of that, we moved past inclusion into prescription. And unfortunately, now in 2026, there's been a backlash. But we are at risk of throwing out all of that meaningful progress with the excess. Cannot disregard diversity. If every executive in your organization makes you feel comfortable, then we aren't hiring leaders, we're hiring puppets. We're hiring a bunch of people that are just like us. I love the quote by Neil deGrasse Tyson, if I said that properly, but he said, if you're successful at bullshitting, then you're not around enough people that are smarter than you. But look around the room, there's a lot of really smart people in here. So I think that we're going to be good today. But growth requires us to challenge, to question norms. Discomfort is often the price of progress. So we cannot disregard diversity. Number 7, protecting sacred cows and silent cultures. Sacred cows, of course, it came from the Hindu religious traditions around the cow being revered. But these are ideas so holy that they become untouchable, that you can't do anything about it. What are some of those ingredients? We've always done it this way. That's not how we do it here. We're so much better than banks. Our members love branches. Are these sacred cows or are these realities? My solution here is to hire a young person because they have no problem telling you what they think, right? I think that there's nothing more humbling than being around a teenager. Is anybody around teenagers? Does anyone still act like a teenager? A few of us. But you try to be cool around a teenager and they knock you down. You try to do anything even remotely authoritative and they rebel. You say anything obscure and they'll look that shit up so fast, right? Chat GPT, anything that you say. So you're constantly being challenged. Young people in today's environment don't settle for just because you said so. And that's the individuals we want to be around. Number 6, hide behind the halo effect. This one's delicate but important. Doing good work does not automatically mean you are doing the right work. And sometimes we hide behind that. Philanthropy is beautiful, but it can't be something that gets in the way of innovation or an excuse for us to be stagnant, right? It isn't a substitution for relevance. Being mission-driven does not mean that we're future-ready. So we've got to keep pushing forward. Number 5, adopting complaining as an identity. And what I mean by that is I am so tired of the people, it's the peanut gallery that stand in the back and go, that'll never work. It's almost like we're giving respect to the devil's advocate or people that the naysayer has suddenly become on a pedestal. When in reality, who's doing the job? And we don't want to get to a place where shared grievance becomes the community. This is an unpopular opinion and a small little tangent, but I don't care which way a toilet paper roll is loaded on the toilet paper thing. I don't care. So you can debate with me about that later. Do some people in here care? I'm sure some of you are like, oh no, there's a way. There is a way. Yeah, it's got to be over. It's got to be under. I know, I've heard it before. So my son recently said to me, he was arguing with me about this point and trying to give me a teenage explanation of why this needs to be loaded in a certain way. And so I listened, I absorbed, I said thank you. And then after he finished his spiel, I looked at him and said, you know, the best way to ensure change in this area? Be the one that changes the toilet paper roll. Right? So when it comes to adopting complaining, we could complain, but why don't we not criticize without contributing? Roll your sleeves up. Number 4, treating our vendors like enemies. How many business partners in the room have been somewhere and kind of felt like you were put at arm's distance, arm's length, right? I think that often we cannot as an industry outperform the fintech organizations, but we can out-collaborate. And the future winner is not the credit that owns everything. The future winner is one that connects everything. Number 3, preach cooperation, but practice competition. I know you guys feel this, that we love the word cooperation until it's inconvenient. And you can't preach cooperation and then be isolated in what you're doing. Collaboration almost feels like a concession. And shared services aren't you giving up. Shared services aren't a surrender. They're for survival. It's about how we come together and build scale and relevance together. The cooperative advantage only works if we cooperate. Number 2, performing digital theater. What I mean by this one is smoke and mirrors, lipstick on a legacy system, right? A new app, but it does exactly the same thing. Online account opening, but you still got to come in for signature, right? AI that answers absolutely nothing. Yeah, we cannot have this theater piece. That's not digital transformation, that's cosplay. Right? We're just pretending and feeling really good about dressing it up a little bit. Credit unions exist because people realize what we cannot do alone, we can do together. And finally, number 1, and Sue already set the stage for this, is disguising narcissism as leadership. If every conversation that you find yourself having or somebody that you work with is like, well, my credit union and my model and my market and my solutions and my philosophies, at some point, we ended up making it all about us. And at some point, we got to a place where, this industry, we were actually debating about it over some appetizers last night about the insularity. Credit unions only competing against credit unions, instead of the fact that that is so much bigger. And these are conversations that we're having all over the place. As Sue mentioned, I had the amazing opportunity to be a part of a TEDx or create a TEDx this year. And in that conversation, we talk about attention-seeking behavior that the social environment has brought. And so, yeah, if you want more views, sure, show more skin, have more outrage, get more pissed, polarize more people, do, crazy things, create perform. Or engage, be courageous, collaborate, work together, cooperate, seek discomfort. So I think that throughout the day-to-day, there's going to be lots of people and lots of thought-provoking ideas. We're going to dig into culture, cults and culture in a way of what are the behaviors that we have that might be inhibiting growth? What are the things that each of us can do to change the lives of the people that we serve, whether it's you're serving credit unions or credit unions serving their members? So I encourage all of you to continue to provoke one another, and throughout the day-to-day, continue to ask questions, to network, have fun, and let's have some energy and get a little crazy, shall we? You guys in? Look at the person next to you, say, are you in?